What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Art of War. We have an exciting video for you today as we're going to talk about the Black Templars and rank every single data sheet in this Codex Supplement.
Yeah, Black Templars, one of my favorite armies in the entire game. They've always done Marines a little differently, and they actually do them really differently in this book, and I'm super excited to talk about them.
Dude, Angry Marines and Jack Harvester, I can't think of a more iconic duo.
World Eaters, Blood Angels, Black Templars. Yeah, I might have a niche.
It's obsession.
That's right.
But it's a good one, and we're going to dive in here ranking all of these different data sheets. So if you are joining us, please do give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell your friends about us. All of that massively helps us grow. In addition, leave a comment below letting us know what you think of the new Black Templar data sheets. There's a lot of really good ones. We went through them in depth in the Codex review, and we're going to continue that now that Jack has played a bunch of games with the Black Templars. There's a lot more context for these different discussions we're going to have about the data sheets. And if you want to see those games, if you want to see those discussions, well, guess what? They're in the War Room, thewarroom.vhx.tv. There's a 3-day free trial. And even better than that, you get access to our international Discord community with a Black Templars channel. Jack's in there, a lot of other high-level Black Templars players trying to figure out the new book and the new builds. So it's a great place to learn, make new friends, and kind of speak out with like-minded people.
So Black Templars, as a Codex Supplement, are going to have a couple of units, right? We've got the Sword Bretheren and the Primaris Crusaders. Then we got some replacements for Codex Marine units, Sternguard and Terminators. We've got a bunch of vehicles, right? Replacements for ones that are in Codex Space Marines. And we got a bunch of characters. And the characters are the really exciting one because those are the purely unique units that we have access to. So we're going to start off with the big man himself, the High Marshal Helbrecht.
Or as Nick refers to him, the High Marshal.
It's a pretty deep pretty deep cut. But yes, Helbrecht is very good, is what he is. He gives a lot of great buffs to his unit, and they are buffs that the units really appreciate. So he gives his unit +1 strength, +1 attack. Used to be crit 5s you couldn't really use very well because you would need to either be out of a transport to switch into the right vow or whatever. Not something that we have to worry about now. We get +1 attack and +1 strength, and that is something that we very, very much appreciate. Right, strength 5 going to strength 6 with +1 to wound means you basically win the game on 4s, which is incredibly helpful, and it also means that you wound all heavy infantry on basically 3s. Which is a really good breakpoint. And then +1 to hit means the units are just 4 attacks apiece, hitting on 2s, lethal hits, strength 6, +1 to wound because of the vow, and he just makes the unit incredibly efficient. He also hits quite hard himself, which is 6 attacks goes to 7 because he gives the buff to himself. At strength 9, AP 3, damage 3, and strength 9 actually matters quite a lot because if he is fighting into a toughness 9 target, which there's a lot of vehicles that are, then he wounds them on 3s. So he hits quite hard. He makes his unit hit quite hard. That's mostly what he does. The last little bit of fluff that he has is he zaps you. His rule doesn't really explain how this happens because it's just called High Marshal. I didn't know all High Marshals have that.
It comes with the rank, Jack. It just comes with the rank.
Yeah, you just fall over dead when you fight him. It's just called High Marshal, but he zaps your opponent at the start of the fight phase, which is very good because it means if they charge you, they take it before they do any damage. So if Jane Czar and some Howling Banshees charge you, it's not unreasonable they lose basically the whole unit before they get to swing, especially if they're wounded a little, which is pretty crazy, right? So they get to do that in the start of the fight phase. They Mortal Zap. Second thing is it's actually quite good Mortal Zap. It's one of the best ones in the game, right? On a 1, nothing happens. On a 2 or a 3, they take D3. On a 4 or 5, they take 3. And on a 6, they take D3 plus 3. And you just pick a unit and engage a range of his units. So there's no like getting around it or anything. And he gets +1 to the roll for every 5 models in his unit. Now that can mean he gets +4 to the roll if he's in a 20-man squad of Templars, but that's not really how I want to use him. I want to put him in a 5-man squad. So he just gets +1. But that means on a 5-up, he just does D3 plus 3. It's almost like the unit like pseudo fights first. You just take a couple guys off the top, and then your opponent swings less hard than they might want. It's a really good ability. Now, here's the deal. He is not the best combat character, not the best combat buff in the book. He is not. In terms of direct personal damage, he loses out to the Emperor's Champion with an enhancement. And in terms of buffing his unit, he loses out to the Castellan. Now, why am I still going to put this guy in Tournament Staple? Well, the reason is because you can only take 3 Castellans and you can only take 1 Emperor's Champion. And the Castellans can only lead 3 units. So it is basically perfect that this dude, Helbrecht, the man, the legend, wants to lead whatever the 4th unit is of troops, right? So you lead 2 units traditionally in my build with Marshal Castellan. You lead one unit of like Assault Intercessors with a Castellan, and then one unit with Helbrecht, right? So let's get that fourth good combat unit, fifth if you count the EC. So that's why he's not in auto take, because I don't think he is. I think he is just lets you extend good melee to multiple units, down out to 4 and 5 melee units, which I think you really want to do in this army. And his unit is just kind of cost efficient into like everything, which is nice. Him in a 5-man squad is just 250 points, and it'll basically clock whatever it touches, which is a very, very good place to be. And it's very efficient and very annoying to deal with. And for that, I think he goes right up there in tournament staple.
Do you think his higher cost than the more generic characters also plays a factor in this?
Kind of yes, kind of no. If he is twice the cost of a Castellan, but he's actually 20 points less than the Marshal Castellan, which I kind of think is one character blended together. So he ends up being a little bit cheaper for his unit.
Gotcha.
Right? So I quite like him. I think at his cost at 120, he's super worth it because he actually makes Sword Brethren hit hard.
Especially with access to the +1 to wound. The strength breakpoints with the +1 strength can matter a lot for punching up.
Yes. Yes, there are times where his unit can be better at doing damage because they get to that strength 6 breakpoint. So into knights, for example, they win on 4s, which is very helpful. So he is an incredible combat character. He doesn't do anything other than that, but he does that very well. So I'm very happy to take him in a squad of Sword Brethren in basically every list I run.
All right, so we go from the High Marshal next to the Chaplain Grimaldus, another named character in the Black Templars, and he received a significant amount of datasheet changes.
Yeah, unfortunately for him, none of them are positive. There's one. His unit no longer counts as like 4 models for going in a transport, which is super helpful because he wants to get in a transport with the unit. But I actually lied because if he's in a transport, his Tempo Relics doesn't trigger and he won't get to pick his abilities. And that is kind of a crime. So while he can get in transports a lot easier, he probably does not want to. So the datasheet changes were pretty dramatic, actually. The reason you would take Grimaldus most of the time was to give 5 of Feel No Pain to whatever unit he was in. You can't do that anymore. It's now +1 toughness, which is so much worse. Right, going from toughness 4 Marines to toughness 5 Marines is like a breakpoint that almost doesn't matter. But 5 of Feel No Pain obviously mattered a lot. In addition, advance, fallback, shoot and charge was pretty good. It's now no longer that. It is now +1 advance and charge. And that is, again, much, much worse. They left +1 AP intact, which I guess you would use once in a blue moon. So that's pretty neat. But generally, that's not great. Now, he does give his unit full rerolls to hit in melee, which is grand, but he has 110 points, my dude. And if I want to give a unit full rerolls to hit in melee, I'm going to give them a Castellan, who is cheap. And he is, Grimaldus, not cheap, unfortunately. 110 is a lot. And considering his pick 3 ability went from great to pretty mediocre, I'm not that impressed with this dude, honestly.
And then you look at his melee weapon, he doesn't hit quite as hard as some of the other characters either. He hits okay, but kind of basic for a combat character.
Yeah, he's a little basic. Now, he can lead Assault Intercessors, which is neat. So you get in there, reroll hits and wounds. But again, just overpriced for that role, really.
Really, what you would think about taking him, I guess, is his main role would be to put him in a squad that is going to get committed, and it's committed at a point where your opponent's damage is a little bit lower, so the 4-up invuln on the Cenobite servitors tanks more damage.
Yeah, I could see that, right? Like, you put him in a squad of 5 Assault Intercessors. Dealing with that unit, kind of annoying. Yes, it's 185, which is a little high, a little higher than I would like. And it would like to start on the board, right? But you give him +1 AP and full rerolls to hit, and then rerolls to wound. That's neat, right? He goes in with 6 attacks. Now it's 6-3-2, full rerolls to hit and wound, +1 wound often. And his unit's going in with +1 AP. I could see that being a niche. So I think that's going to land him in niche pick, honestly. He's not like YGWY. It's just he's a little overcosted for his job, and he lost a lot of what made him like special, realistically. Now, being able to join Assault Intercessors means he at least has a role here, I think. But that's about it. It's a little niche. You probably wouldn't find me doing it. The one thing that's pretty nasty with him is that the servitors actually, as you pointed out, have a 4-up invuln. There's 3 models there. So it's kind of a bear to try to get through that unit efficiently because you just have a bunch of invulns that can scam your opponent.
And he has a 5 of Fiend of Pain, so the Cenobites have it as well, right?
Correct.
It's on their abilities. So yeah,
it's kind of weird that like the character has to be the one tanking. But that is how it is, right? Because you can take the saves on the servitors and then try and, when the unit dies, hopefully he doesn't also die. I think you can get some mileage out of that. I would like it if they brought his points down a little, and then
maybe
I could
an
really
85,
consider that.
90 points. He starts getting pretty tasty with those Assault Intercessors.
Yeah, 90 with some Assault Intercessors I could see being a little tasty, a little juicy. But 110, unfortunately, just kind of prices it out.
All right, sad for Grimaldus, but we do have another named character for the Black Templars, and this guy is a dramatically improved beast.
Yeah, this guy balls. This guy balls hard. So the Emperor's Champion, I think, is a very well-designed unit. The thing that he does the best is actually kind of hidden on his datasheet. He makes his unit move lightning fast, which is very helpful because you'd really like one very long-range threat in combat, and he does that. So what does he do? Well, he personally moves 8. So that means his unit functionally moves 8 because they trail 2 inches behind, and then when they charge, they just slingshot into the combat. It's totally fine. It's very easy to do. In addition, if one of the targets of the charge is a character, which just includes any unit with a character, they are +2 to charge. So functionally, they're +4 to move because 2 extra inches of move on him, and then +2 to charge. That is very far. Right? If you look at World Leaders, an army I know very intimately, Karn and 10 Berserkers is a very fast-moving threat, and this moves 2 inches further than that because they get out 3, move 8, advance and charge. If you have these guys advance and charge, which Gladius can very easily provide,
Or Stormlance.
or Stormlance too, they get out 3, move 8 on him, +2 to charge, and advance and charge, and go very, very far. Right, up to 17 inches with a +2 charge. So that's the number one thing he does. And that is good enough that I'm going to put him in auto take anyway. But that's not all that he does. He is also a lone operative. So if you shoot his unit out from under him, guess what? He's still alive. In fact, he's quite hard to kill once you've done that because you can change once per phase when an attack goes through and you fail to save. You can change the damage characteristic to 0. And once a phase is pretty rude, man. If your opponent, first off, both of those detachments we just mentioned, that where you really want to use him, have reactive moves. And so if you react to move him out of 12 inches of your opponent, they shoot at the unit, they kill down to him, maybe they force through like 2 las cannon saves on him, you fail 1, you pass 1, you take the fail and you turn it to damage 0, and then he takes 0 damage. And then if your opponent wants to charge him, he again has a set damage to 0, and he's not easy to kill. So he almost all the time will live when his unit dies. It's actually very rare that he dies also with his unit. And so that means he then walks around by himself, being a lone op that just bonks people. That's also not where it ends. He hits quite hard in combat. He has 6 attacks at strength 8, AP 3, damage 3, with +1 to wound if strength, if toughness is equal to or greater. And crucially, he is not an epic hero anymore. So he can take enhancements, which I think is super cool because you can only take one Emperor's Champion. So, and in the lore, that makes a hell of a lot of sense. But there's no reason, because he's just a dude, right? He's just a dude in the special armor and special sword. I think the Emperor's sword and the black armor, I think. He's just a dude who got visions ahead of time. So there's no reason he can't have some cool relic or whatever going on. So you can give him enhancements, and he takes enhancements phenomenally well. My favorite is Honor Vehement. So on Assault Doctrine turn, he's 8 attacks at 10-3-3, which is very good. In addition, he's he's Precision, Base, Anti-Character 5+, which ordinarily doesn't matter a lot. But once a game, when he's fighting any units that have characters, he can go Devastating Wounds. And so he devs on 5s. That's a lot of stuff, man. There's a lot of rules on his data sheet.
And what about his points cost, Mr. Jack?
90, which I think is fairly reasonable.
It's very good.
It's pretty reasonable. I think he could probably stand to go up a little bit, but I'm not going to advocate for that.
But he's just very good for his points.
90, I think, is a very solid points cost for him, and I think it really lets him. You don't hurt to take him, which I think is a great place to be for him because I want to take him in every list. He's so good. Auto take right up there.
Yeah, I think he's fantastic. Obviously, he can also join Sword Bretheren, which is another unit that helps unlock additional level of things. He can go into some other things like the Crusader Squad, but for the most part, I think you're probably going to lean on Sword Brethren here for him.
I've actually liked him in Assault Intercessors.
Yeah, just to get the reroll wounds?
Yes, so you get the reroll wounds, but also because you can only take 3 Sword Brethren units, and the characters you can staple together in Sword Brethren units are pretty messed up. So, like, one of them wants Helbrecht, a couple of them want Marshals and Castellans, and we'll cover why those guys are such a great combination in a second. But those combinations you can only do 3 times. And so I think if you want to just take a dude who runs around by himself, because he doesn't buff Sword Bros, right? He doesn't make them hit harder or do anything else. And Sword Brethren kind of need that help. They kind of need a little bit of buffs before they're actually good. I think you just put him in Assault Intercessors and just zip him after something. And then he hits really hard. His unit still rerolls wounds, +1 to wounds.
Sub 200 point missile.
165? Yeah. Yeah, they're pretty good at that.
Awesome. So Emperor's Champion heading up to the auto take, and I cannot disagree with that. He's fantastic. Now we head on to the generic characters, starting off with the Marshal, who is the captain equivalent for the Black Templars, and he's a beast.
Yes, so he is kind of weird. So he is basically a captain profile, except he only takes a mastercrafted power weapon. Mastercrafted power weapons in this book are lethal hits, and chainswords are sustained hits. And that's important because if he's leading a unit, they get crit 5s on hit rolls.
It's very strong.
It's very strong. In addition, this dude kicks ass. He kicks ass for sure because he gets a bonus attack for every enemy unit within 6 inches, and he starts at 7. So yes, he is only strength 5, AP 2, damage 2, but he will be lethal 5s, and he will have 8 to 10 attacks. Oftentimes, 8 is very rare. It's usually 9 or 10 attacks. That's a lot of attacks, and crit 5 is a hell of a rule. And yes, that's all he does. But also, that's pretty good.
In addition, there's going to be a combination with their lieutenant equivalent, the Castellan, where they can be stapled together in a unit. And
yes, sir.
Means there's a lot of really good rules in one single unit.
Yes, the Castellan gives them reroll hits. We'll cover the Castellan in a second. And then that means that a crit 5's lethal rerolling hits unit just
sayonara opponent unit is dead.
He just rocks up and kills them. And he's very important actually in the Sword Brethren because he contributes like as many attacks as the unit almost, right? 5 Sword Brethren, or this combination usually receives 4 Sword Brethren. 4 Sword Brethren is 12 attacks. He is 10 attacks. So by adding him into the unit, you've like doubled the damage of the unit. And that's very important because 3 attacks a model is actually kind of bad on Sword Brethren. So by adding him and the Castellan, you still get up to a good damage threshold just because the characters have like 16 attacks between the two of them, which is kind of crazy, honestly. So he is a staple part of that combo. That being said, I think he does significantly less of the heavy lifting than the Castellan does. So I think he's going to land right in Tournament Staple.
Excellent. Well, speaking of which, let's head on to the Castellan himself, the lieutenant equivalent for the Black Templars. This guy is incredible, and he's a very lowly cost of 60 points.
60 points. 60 points. So the 2 ways I like to take him are one with a Marshal in Sword Brethren, because then you're lethal 5s hitting on 2s with everything, full rerolls, and when you're lethal 5s with full rerolls, what you do is you reroll everything that is not a 5, fishing for those 5s to hit. And you just get to do tremendous damage. So what are his abilities? His abilities are, well, first off, if you kill an enemy unit, I've never remembered to roll for this. If you kill an enemy unit in melee with his unit, on a 4-up, you gain a CP.
Nice bonus.
Which is solid. That's fine. We don't have a lot of CP economy in this army. It's fine, right? But the good one is when they're selected to fight, they take a leadership check. If you fail it, you get reroll 1s to hit on a unit that hits on 2s. Cool. And if you pass it, you get full rerolls to hit. And that is where you start fishing to try to get the 5s.
Yep. Every single hit you still, besides a crit, you reroll.
Yes, pretty much. And then you still hit on 2s, so the odds you whiff on the rerolls is pretty low, but the odds you convert it into an automatic wound are pretty high. And that's very good. He also has 6 attacks with lethal hits, which helps buff out the number of attacks in the unit that is so important. And this combo can do a ridiculous amount of damage. It basically 5 dudes plus a Marshal Castellan, basically top to bottom an Imperial Knight. It's a little close, right? It depends. If it is a Knight with a 5-up invuln in combat, then they will basically probably miss by like a wound or 2 because of the feel no pain. And if it's a Knight without that and you go +1 AP in the Gladius, it's dead. It's just gone. Bye-bye. Take like 35 damage or something. It's pretty crazy. So if they're taking 5 ups, you get like right on the edge. If they're taking 6 up, they're gone, just deceased. So this is really good. Not only is it good in Sword Brethren with the Marshal, it's also my like little pet unit is you put one of them in Assault Intercessors, because then you're reroll to hit, reroll to wound, +1 to wound for 135 points. And that's a very cheap missile. You can run out and basically kill whatever is even remotely in its weight class. Because like you run into like a Rhino or a Plague Drone or something like that, and you just kill it. It is just dead, right? You wound it on 4s with everything, except for the Chainswords wound on 5s. Full rerolls to wound, full rerolls to hit. It's gone.
And I think when you're an army that's largely combat oriented, you need a variety of types of units so that you're not always having to spend the most expensive, like uber killer into something that's medium toughness.
Yes. It's good to have the full strength units for when your opponent pushes their knights forward or whatever big unit is comparable to it, right? If your opponent pushes Magnus forward or something, you need a unit that can go in there and chop him in half. But when your opponent puts like Spawn on the objective, you really don't want to use your 270 point unit, Marshal, Castellan, 5 Sword Brethren to go kill him. So you need something cheap that can go and reliably clear objectives basically every time. And for 135, the Marshal or the Castellan Assault Intercessor package also punches up quite well. So I like all of that. In fact, me liking that unit so much is why Helbrecht gets a spot in the list. Because otherwise it's Marshal, Castellan, Sword Brethren, Marshal, Castellan, Sword Brethren, Marshal, Castellan, Sword Brethren.
And you think the Castellan is going to fit up in that auto take? He's the first character you add in.
He's probably the best character in the army after playing with it a little bit. The Marshal Castellan combo you can think of as an 140 point character, but the person who's doing the heavy lifting in that relationship is the Castellan. So he goes into auto take, and the Marshal is in tournament staple.
Excellent. Well, we have another character here, a brand new character for Black Templars. He's the Execrator, which is their unique chaplain.
Yes, so we got some cool new character models. He looks fantastic, and his rules look very, very good. Mm-hmm. I'm going to argue he's not quite as good as his rules look. So he does have like 8 attacks, because you can give him a mastercrafted power weapon with extra attacks. You can give him the Crozius, so he has 8 attacks on the charge. In addition, he gives his unit advance and charge, and then he has some other rule where if he kills something, he forces a battle shock check. That's really not that important. But he gives his unit advance and charge, and he has like 8 attacks. And that sounds like he is crazy. But there's a couple of reasons why he's not. First off, he can only join Crusader Squads and Sword Brethren Squads.
So no Assault Intercessors.
No Assault Intercessors. Nothing cheap, right, where he can just run out. In addition, 5 of his 8 attacks are AP1, which is kind of not that great. And the other big part of it is that Sword Brethren kind of need help killing stuff. You'll notice the Marshal, Castellan, Sword Brethren unit flips a knight. But here's the deal. You know who's doing the heavy lifting on that? It's the Marshal and the Castellan. And the Sword Brethren kind of function as glue to stick them together. That's not really how it works with the Execrator. If you spend 130 to take 5 Sword Brethren, that's 15 attacks at AP 2, damage 2. It's like less damage. That unit combined with the Execrator and 5 dudes is like less damage than like 6 Blade Guard. It's kind of low damage cap on that unit. The amount of times I've like, all right, well, I'm taking a detachment that doesn't advance in charge, so I need the Execrator to have any kind of threat range. And I send them out and they just don't kill anything. It's happened a couple times. So I think you, even in those detachments where you don't have advance in charge, I think you might only take like 1 Execrator just to get that threat range. But man, you need those units to hit when they connect. And with the Execrator, they just kind of don't. You really feel that Sword Brethren only have 3 attacks. You really feel that sucks for the Execrator. That being said, advance in charge on a stick is quite good. So he's not going to fall into like niche pick or anything, but I think he's just a solid choice. In addition, you can easily replicate what he does in the Stormlance and then a little bit tougher in the Gladius. Right? Stormlance, you just don't take him anyway. But in the Gladius, it's very easy to replicate what he does. And so he's just not that important there.
Yeah, I think his value gains, or he gains significant value when you look at the Black Templar specific detachments.
He does.
Especially if there is a detachment effectively based around him. So he gains a lot of value there, but is that going to be the most competitive way to play Black Templars? That remains to be seen, but probably the generic ones are competing for some of the best Space Marine ways to play.
I would agree with that. I think once they hit, you need to be sure that you kill your target, and he does not help with that very much.
And our last character here is going to be the Crusade Ancient, also a brand new model for Black Templars, and his 2 rules are going to be 4-up fight on death for his unit, and their second rule is once their unit has killed an enemy unit, they transition to having the Crusade Ancient get +5 OC if the unit's not battle shocked, which is cute. Frankly, we talked about in the Codex review, this might be one of the worst new characters in the game, alongside the Scatros and some of the other abominable existences out there. He's pretty bad. He looks awesome, though.
He looks so cool, which is such a shame, because he is completely devoid of any reason to want to take him. Like the Scatros, you can make some argument about lone op. You can say the word lone op over and over again or something. But the Crusade Ancient, I really just don't understand why you want this guy.
There is one reason, Jack. They built an entire detachment around having him in units.
Don't remind me. He's so bad that he literally destroys a detachment. Because they built a detachment entirely around Ancients that if it just said character, probably wouldn't even be that bad. But it says Ancient, and he might be like the worst of the Ancients because he is the most expensive. But man, his brothers are not much better. And they actively, by being so bad and having to be in any unit to do anything, they actually just make that detachment unplayable, which sucks, right? Because that detachment sounds cool until you read the word Ancient in there. It's just like, what are we doing, man?
He's got a decent mastercrafted power weapon, like some of the other characters. He can go in Crusade squads and the Sword Bretheren, and he can join a unit with a captain, chapter master, execrator, or lieutenant. So he has a lot of options for joining. But you can get Fight on Death in other ways.
You can, and Fight on Death 4+ as the only rule in your unit is like so niche. It's crazy. I'm not spending 65 points on this dude. I'm not spending 40 points on this dude. Like,
he's more expensive than the Castellan. What is going on? How are we coming up with these points?
I really don't get it, man.
How?
I really don't. I could not tell you. I read his rules and went, okay, so he doesn't have a data sheet. That's fine. Like, sure, man. There is just no reason to take him. And I'm not even saying there's a reason, it's just too expensive. I'm saying there isn't a reason. You look at his data sheet, it is barren. There's nothing there. He has 5 attacks, I guess, for 65 points. Fantastic. I think this guy is the poster child for YGWY.
Yep. When your unit doesn't have a specific role and is just kind of amorphously there as a body, it needs to be ludicrously cheap. And even if you made this guy cheaper, we can go for enhancements instead and there'll be more value than him.
Yeah. This dude sucks, man. He also takes up a slot in the unit, so he's actively like hogging a spot another character could go. It's kind of crazy, actually, how bad this guy is. There's no reason to exist. Like, actually no reason to exist. Give him a cool rule, man. Give him something he gives to his unit. Give him something he gives to all units around. Maybe, okay, all right. Maybe give him the non-epic hero thing like the Emperor's Champion, where you can only take one, right? So you have one banner in your army, but it gives like a big 12-inch aura of, I don't know, something, right? So you can take it and it's in the center of your army, but like maybe if he dies, your army becomes sad. I don't know. Anything would be cooler than what they
sounded like an ethereal from 3rd edition.
Yeah, you have the one banner in your army, it's Crusade, and as long as you can keep that banner high, then your army becomes cool, and then as soon as it dies, nothing. But I'm not going to do GW's job for them.
This guy is a poster child. When you see those comments like, hey, Games Workshop has a plan here, they want to sell these models, they're going to create these crazy rules, and you're going to buy all of them. But then you have models like this, and it doesn't make any sense if that was the plan.
There's no rules to sell. Maybe he has some cool Crusade rules. I will never know.
If you want a good-looking Ancient for your hobby project, he's great for that. But on the tabletop, avoid.
Yes.
Why GWY?
For sure.
Adeptroll is the all-in-one math hammer app for Android and iOS. It makes crunching numbers easy and even fun. Import profiles from ease. Here you can see we have Guilliman and a Tyranid Warrior. You can just see how these two units attack each other and what the expected outcomes will be. You can even add modifiers or Field Pains to make your accuracy even more precise. The way it works is it crunches thousands of simulations and then gives you a clear tactical outcome so you can focus on making good decisions on the battlefield with informed math behind them, without having to do all the work. You can get a great breakdown of expected casualties, hits, wounds, saves, survivability odds, and even more. If you want to sharpen your skills and become better at Warhammer, check out Adept Roll. It's available for iOS and Android right now. Just search Adept Roll in the search bar of your app store or click the link in our description.
Next up, we have the vaunted Sword Bretheren Squad, the elite infantry of the Black Templars, and one of Jack's favorite units.
Yeah, so Sword Bros have gotten some really interesting changes, actually. They've undergone a bit of a complete reimagining of the way their unit functioned. So they used to be this, like, just connect hammer to face, kill your opponent sort of unit, right? They gave +1 damage to the whole unit, which helped get around half damage, which was pretty funny. But the whole unit would be damage 2, some of them would be damage 3. And they would just hit like a truck, right? Because you have the full rerolls to wound lightning claws that were now damage 2. The thunder hammer that's damage 3. You'd have a mastercrafted power weapon on the sergeant who's damage 3. And then you'd give the character crucially attached to the unit just a massive damage buff. You would have, like, yes, the Emperor's Champion hits like a truck, but he did not hit like Honor Vehement Captain used to. Honor Vehement Captain used to just be 10 attacks at strength 10, AP 3, damage 3, dev wounds, lance. It's pretty ridiculous, actually.
Yeah, and they paid a lot of points for being an elite infantry unit.
Yes, they were 140, then they went up to 150, then they went back down to 140. They kind of hovered in that spot, because with the character, they were kind of expensive. And they would just do that. That's all they did. They just hit really hard, right? They were 3 wound Marines, so they were kind of annoying to, like, kill quickly, which is still something they do. And they were basically there to, like, hand the attached character a bazooka, and then that character would beat you to death with the bazooka, because that's what you do with bazookas in this analogy. So Helbrecht would be in there with like 12 sweep attacks at damage 2 because they give him +1 damage, or the captain would just beat something to death because he was like 10 attacks at damage 3. So you could make the attendant character crazy. So the damage output was bananas. That is not really what they do on their datasheet. Now they can receive buffs and do that, right? The Marshal Castellan package still does a tremendous amount of damage, and crucially does not require any buffs. That was something that they did in the past, right? You needed Lance +1 AP, you needed Oath a lot of the time. Not really a thing we have now. So being able to do their damage without requiring any buffs is fantastic. So if you attach Marshal and Castellan to the unit, they are the glue that connects those guys together, and they'll do some pretty good damage. If you put Helbrecht in there, they'll do some pretty good damage. If you don't do either of those things, they will not do good damage for you, unfortunately. They went to 3 attacks, not 4 base. They went to 3. But the way that their damage works is a little different now. Now, instead of hitting on 3s, they hit on 2s. So 3 attacks hitting on 2s versus 4 attacks that hit on 3s is like pretty similar if you don't have Oath, and we don't. They did not do reliable damage without Oath, though. That's something to note. And then they gained lethal hits. So their damage is like fairly similar on their profile, but they can't get buffed from Oath anymore. So
they do get the Vow for +1.
They do get the Vow for +1. So their damage comes in like weird ways now. -1 attack, but +1 to hit, and lethal hits, and the Vow is a very interesting way to get the damage buff. Mm-hmm. Now, you don't have the Lightning Claw because that's damage 1, you just don't take it. You don't have the Thunder Hammer because it hits on 3s, so you just don't take it. And so that means you are basically just running the Mastercrafted power weapons. That's the way I do it. Just everyone has a Mastercrafted power weapon. It's like statistically the best damage piece in the thing.
Crucially, it has something that procs off crit 5s, which is lethals.
Yes. And also it hits on 2s, not 3s, like the Thunder Hammer. So anyway, their damage comes in really weird ways now, but it's still probably roughly equivalent. And then you can include characters that do a bunch of damage. But what that freed them up to do was get a different datasheet rule. And their datasheet rule is a doozy, to be honest with you. Every time an enemy unit falls back from them, after they end that fallback move, the Sword Bretheren Squad can make a normal move. That is
full normal
just
move.
A full normal move. That is a pain in the ass for your opponent. I'll just put it like that. It is a big problem for them. Because it's a normal move, just a regular normal move, nothing crazy going on. It means you can get back in transports with it. And that's pretty huge. You'll get pretty used to it this army, getting your guys out of transports, moving the transport up, charging, and then putting your unit near the transport. So if they fall back from you with like whatever's left, you can get back in. You can consolidate into a second thing, grab it, and if they fall back from you, just get back in. Very strong. Also, because it's a flat 6 move, you can put the transport behind a wall 9 inches away. And then when they get back in, they just automatically get back in like behind a wall, and you can keep using the same unit multiple times. Mm-hmm. Very good ability on that. But also you can stack it with other reactive moves. So in the Gladius, if they end a move within 9, which oftentimes the unit that's falling back from you will end the move within 9, You can do the D6 reactive, then you can do the flat 6 and just get back in a transport that's pretty far away. If you're in Tactical Doctrine or you're in the Storm Lance, it's just a flat 12 because it's a 6 off the reactive and a 6 off their datasheet reactive, and then they get in a transport that's 15 inches away. So they're kind of a pain in the ass to deal with, honestly. Their damage is probably slightly lower all the time, but significantly higher than if you didn't use Oath on whatever target it was. So you're not Oaths dependent anymore like you used to be in the past, which is good because you don't have it.
Because you could send multiple units out now and not be worried about one swinging down.
Exactly. It was a real problem in the past that Sword Brethren that went out with Oath were very reliable and did good damage. Sword Brethren that went out without Oath were not reliable and could do any amount of damage. You don't know. So it's very nice that you can just use all of your units and they do good, reliable damage all the time, which is fantastic. In addition, this sort of bleeds over into our shooting. Our shooting also has the same sort of mechanic where you don't really need Oath anymore, but we'll talk about that when we get to the Repulsor Executioner. Sword Brethren, very good. I've talked a lot about what they do. The get back in transports and stuff is very nice to set up. It makes your opponent have to play around it, and that can give you a lot of leeway. In addition, they glue characters together, the Marshal and the Castellan specifically, and then give them a bunch of attacks that also trigger lethal hits. So that combination is very, very good, and if you run them with Helbrecht, it's very good. So I would say they are somewhere between tournament staple and auto pick. What's your thought?
I mean, I think you're going to see basically 2 to 3 units in most Black Templar lists, regardless of detachments. And because they allow you to operate at... basically, the unit itself doesn't have as much defense as, say, like a Blade Guard unit or some of the others. Yes. Natively, there's no 4-up invuln here. I honestly think the fallback move is quite significant.
It is.
And the ability to go behind a wall or to get out of line of sight of, some things that can't advance and shoot. Okay, now they can only shoot one thing at this unit. You might have the character and like a dude or 2 left, and that's still a unit.
That's enough, because all you need to do is have one dude to glue the 2 characters together.
I honestly kind of lean towards auto take personally.
By all means, I'm not going to argue against that.
I think like at minimum you take 1 or 2. You might not take all 3 in every list. Maybe you go for more assault intercessors. Maybe you go for some crusaders. You have some variability there. But I think honestly, like having at least one of these data sheets in every list feels really impactful.
I would agree with that. I think a lot of that is because they're the only thing that like the Marshal and Castellan can really join and do their mojo with, and they're like the only thing Helbrecht can really join. But to be fair, just being the best thing they can join is pretty solid. Otherwise, it's assault intercessors, and that's kind of it.
When we think about a unit that's an auto take, usually it's something that not only furthers our game plan, and Black Templars, they want to go out, they want to beat their opponent to death, and ideally force your opponent to have to put a lot of stuff into that unit in return. The fact that they open up your opponent having to play around their reactive and potentially a second reactive move means that a lot of armies just aren't that fast. You're in a meta right now where there's a lot of stat checks, a lot of things that can advance and do things. The ability to keep these units alive for multiple sequences is honestly pretty damn strong. I think they're going to be the core of a lot of the high-level Black Templar lists where you try and keep getting extra activations. You don't just have 5 combat units that you were talking about, or 6 like combat activations. If you keep these units alive, you have 7, 8, 9 activations.
Yeah,
that gets a little silly.
Significant. In addition, I think like the best way to use these guys' reactive move is, listen, when you combine it with another reactive move and go super far, it's like great. But I think what it really is you just have reactive moves like everywhere, right? You fall back from me, I reactive move. You move with an enemy, I reactive move, right?
You know how annoying it is to play against one, let alone like 3 squads go in and they're, your opponent's staged in a ruin. The Black Templars attack that ruin, and then they threaten to just go behind it.
Yep.
You know how crazy aggressive they have to get to interact with that in return, and then they get hit by the second layer much easier. It fits the game plan really, really nicely. This is a very good rule.
Yeah.
I'm shocked that somebody wrote this and the Crusade Ancient. It's just like, what?
This
how?
Codex is a lot of that, man. This codex is a lot of like well-reasoned data sheets and some very...
This is complexity.
Decisions.
This is good.
Yeah, it's a very cool unit. I wish some of the weapons were more takeable. I think it's unfortunate that the base Mastercraft power weapon is like statistically the best. But other than that, it's a very well-designed unit. And yes, I'm not going to argue about it. Let's slam that right in auto take.
Let's go, baby. Next up, we have the Sternguard Veteran Squad. So Black Templars have a unique version of Sternguard that has its own datasheet rules, since they can't have access to the Oath, which procs the devs and whatnot. So instead, they get access to each time model in this unit makes an attack that targets the closest eligible unit, you get reroll wounds of 1. What is going on?
Yeah, it's not, man. It's
Why?
not. It's not great. I mean, this just sucks, right? Like, this is just bad. Sternguard used to have something like this where they reroll ones to wound. It was bad then. Nobody took Sternguard. Then they changed Sternguard to full rerolls to wound. Then people started taking Sternguard some amount of the time. You're just not going to take Sternguard here. All right, fine. If you wanted to say that, just say you can't take Sternguard, man. Like, what? Why make a datasheet this bad? I don't understand. You can't even take, like, the chainsword hits like a truck, man. 6 attacks. I looked, I'm like, ooh, maybe if everyone gets the chain. Nope, it's just the sergeant. Just the sergeant.
He's hogging it.
He's hogging it. He's like, my chainsword. Thank you very much. Yeah, this datasheet is quite poor. It's very bad. It all hits on 3s. This unit needed Oath regardless, and it's not going to get it because it's in Black Templars. It's very bad. I don't know what else to say.
YGWY. I'm sorry, Sternguard. You're really cool models, but you are not quite good enough in Black Templars.
Yeah, pretty far from good enough, unfortunately. Same thing with the Terminators.
Speaking of not good enough, we have the basic Terminator Squad.
If you wanted me to not take the data sheets that key off of Oath, just tell me I can't take them. Don't use up a slot in my book to put a god-awful data sheet and tell me I can take that instead.
Honestly, it would have been really cool if their combat hit on 2s as well for the Terminators and Sternguard to get around the lack of Oath, as they're like very elite crusading Terminators and Sternguard.
Yeah, that'd be sick.
That would be cool, but instead they get the Judgment of the Weak, and the Weak they thought was going to be the enemy. It's actually this data sheet.
No, it's judgment. It's not. They're not judging the weak. It is the weak's judgment.
Yes.
Right.
So each time an enemy unit, excluding monsters and vehicles, God forbid, within engaged range of one of these units falls back, all the models in the enemy unit take a desperate escape test.
Not monster and vehicles.
Yep. When doing so, they if they're battle shocked, it's -1. It's like one of the worst rules you could possibly get. It almost never comes up because when you go in with a unit, especially an expensive unit like Terminators, you want your opponent to be dead.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of a Terminator problem in general. They kind of suck in combat. If you hit on 3s with no rerolls, you're not reliable at doing anything, actually. Terminators, unfortunately, have like 3 attacks, and they hit on 3s, and they have no rerolls. So that means they're quite reliable at doing nothing, which sucks. They also have Stormbolters, which I guess is a gun that you have on the unit. Again, if you didn't want me to take them, just tell me I can't take them. Don't hand me a terrible data sheet and say, you want them? How about this? You want to take these new and improved Terminators? No, I do not.
Next up, we have another unique Black Templar datasheet here. It's the Crusader Squad. And for a little bit in the meta, about a year ago, we had the Terror of the Crusader Squads absolutely dominating the board with 100+ bodies and drowning people in defense and just volume of attacks. And they've done some significant changes here to the Crusader datasheet.
Yes.
And surrounding support.
Surrounding support actually is the bigger part. So they went from rerolling advances and charges to D6+2 Blood Surge, which is significantly better. Unfortunately, the support around the unit is much lower. You don't get a 6 of Feel No Pain, because that's just not a thing in Black Templars anymore. And very, very importantly, 2 units don't get a 5-up. It used to be 2 units got a 5-up Feel No Pain. One with Grimaldus and one with the enhancement. The enhancement, which it doesn't matter. It doesn't exist anymore. So the fact I forgot, it's fine. That was huge, right? 6 of Feel No Pain was like, okay, whatever, that's fine. But the 5 of Feel No Pain units were a real bear to try to chew through.
The other thing is it existed in a meta where Armor of Contempt lasted the entire phase rather than an activation, which matters a lot on 20 body units.
Yes, so now the fact that these things can Blood Surge D6+2 is like nice, man, but they are going to die at light speed. In addition, this isn't 20 Marines, right? This is actually 12 Marines and 8 Scouts stapled together, which is great as long as you're like getting a cheap cost on these bodies, but you're really kind of not, right? They're like 15 points a model. And so what that means is they just die really fast. I don't see the 20-man Crusader squads like taking over the meta at all.
Let me give you another reason, Jack. there's a thing called Chaos Knights out there. You may be familiar with it. And the most dominant knight we're seeing right now is a despoiler with double Gatling cannon. That's 2 guns. Each has 18 shots at strength 6, AP 2 damage. And there are a variety of detachments where you can get sustained and ignores cover on these to make it even better. I cannot imagine a unit like this, at least the 20 body units, existing in a meta with that.
I see your double Gatling Despoiler Knight, and I'm going to raise you one better.
Are you going to go with the Battle Cannon?
No.
The Blast Man?
Nope. I'm going to raise you Death Shroud Terminators. See, here's the deal. If you are a 2-wound model and you don't have anything to defend you against those 2 damage attacks coming in, dude, armies can just spew those out. Armies can absolutely vomit 2 damage on you if you don't have like a 6-up Feel No Pain to blank. All you need to do, right, was just save one of them, and then the next one was what killed you. And so it would kind of slow it down a little bit. And the 5-up Feel No Pain was sometimes you just scammed people on Feel No Pains, and it got really annoying. But here's the thing. 3 Death Shroud with a character will ice a 20-man squad every single time. That just kind of is what it is, right? They hit on 2s, they wound on 2s. You get a 6-up or no save because they are plus AP against you. Mm-hmm. And you just die. They'll just kill a 20-man squad basically every single time if they have the character and they have the unit and they have any kind of buff. That's not good, man. That's really bad. In addition, if you run into, let's count the ways, right? Like, you run into World Eaters. Well, they have Forge Fiends, so good luck with that. And then also they have like Karn and 10 who just run in and just flip a 20-man squad every single time. So that's pretty bad. That's an auto cannot win if you go with 20-man squads.
These units were preying on stacking defensive buffs that we had mentioned previously. And also, the meta was more MSU, more control-based. And what would be better than 100 OC2 Marine bodies that you could that could control space on the board? So the meta's really passed by that type of unit. There are some detachments in the Black Templar Supplement that try and support larger Crusader squads. I don't think it's meant for this meta. We have to maybe in a couple months when things change, we could look back at it, but probably you're only going to see the 10-mans.
I would say so. You can make some kind of argument that they can also glue a Marshal and a Castellan together. They don't do it as well, but you can make that argument that they do that, right? For slightly more, but you have Blood Surge and you have more models in the unit. I could see that argument. It's going to keep them out of YGWY, to be quite frank with you. Mm-hmm. But ultimately, I think they lose out on that comparison, especially because they're more expensive than 5 Sword Bretheren, and 10 failed saves against damage 2 kills both units regardless, right? And that's a lot of what you're going to be facing down. Yes, damage 3 is slightly better, but if you're facing down a mass damage 3, they'll probably get the Crusaders anyway, is my guess. So they're not that tough. They definitely don't hit very hard. If you take any of the detachments that aren't like the Gladius or Stormlance, they're not going to fall back and do anything. That's a huge problem for these units. They just don't hit that hard, which is kind of a problem. Mm-hmm. And yes, in the past, they got by on your opponent unable to kill them at the speed that was required to either keep them from getting run over or take objectives away. And that's just not the case anymore. Now, basically every army, because you don't have any way to break up 2 damage attacks, will just chew through whole units at a time at a speed you just can't match. And so I think they land pretty clearly to me in niche pick.
Yeah. Also call the Horde as a fixture as well.
Yeah, I think you take 10-man squads, and I just don't think 10-man squads are that good. But 20-man squads are worse. They are worse.
Niche pick?
Niche pick.
All right. Going down there with Grimaldus, the buddy who used to run with them.
They can smooch down there.
Now we're going to head over into the vehicles here, starting off with the primary transport, the Impulsor.
So the Impulsor is very interesting. It's actually exactly the same as the normal Impulsor, just 5 points more, and you get a multi-melta instead of a heavy stubber.
Worth it.
It's definitely worth it. Now, on its face, for 85 points, it's kind of whatever. But here's the deal. You want infantry, slow-ish infantry melee units, and so that means you want Impulsors. Impulsors aren't going to blow the world apart on their own, but they are relevant contribution to damage, and they keep your units safe. And then once the units get out, the units can just get right back in, right in your opponent's turn with the reactive moves. And also, the Impulsors can hold objectives in the back lines, can screen, can do actions. What oftentimes will happen is your whole army gets out of Impulsors and Repulsor Executioners and whatnot, and like goes up board and fights your opponent. And your opponent goes, oh my god, and has to like fight back to avoid getting killed. And while that happens, like 3 Impulsors score every point on the board. And that is a very viable thing. It's a very valuable thing even for that army, which is having the unit that keeps your melee units safe, lets them react to move back inside, transports them up early, and then once those units are out and fighting, holds objectives, screens, does actions. Very important. You definitely take the Shield Dome. Do not take the Bellicatus missile array or the Sky Talon array or whatever. It's very tempting to say, I'm going to shoot people with this thing. Yes. But what's more important is that it transports them up safely. Your opponent wants to crack the transport and get to the juicy center, and having any kind of unreliability on that is actually pretty huge, right? Your opponent can't just get a couple Meltas nearby and be sure you're dead. No, it could just bounce on the 5-up, so you got to be very careful.
Yep.
Impulsors, good, but I wouldn't say they're like an auto take. I would say they are probably a tournament staple.
Yeah, they're the supplementary piece that helps enhance the auto takes.
Yes. For sure.
So Impulsor going up in the tournament staple. And then we have the 3 different Gladiator tanks, starting off with the Lancer, which is the anti-tank platform, and it has a free reroll to hit, wound, and damage when it is activating.
Yes, so this is actually exactly the same cost as a normal Gladiator Lancer, 160, but it has a multi-melta instead, and I like that a lot more because, you know, just having the 2 shots is like a recipe for disaster, right? It's a recipe for just missing a hit roll, even with the reroll or whatever. They pass 1 too many invulns and suddenly you're not killing the unit. So having a second gun with 2 additional shots that can use those rerolls too is actually pretty big.
Yep.
In addition, I'm a lot more willing to tolerate the Gladiator Lancer in an environment that has no rerolls whatsoever, right? In an environment where you just don't have Oath, I'm a lot more willing to look at any vehicle that says I reroll hit rolls. And so I'm a lot more willing to give this guy the time of day. In fact, actually, he's pretty good.
Yeah, I think he's genuinely good. You get that extra multi-melta, and this is a perfect meta for having additional reliable anti-tank platforms.
I agree, especially at long range, which is very helpful, helps you control the firing lanes. So I would say he probably falls into like tournament staple, legitimately.
Yeah.
If you want to run shooting platforms in Black Templars, you want to look at the ones that come with their own rerolls. He does. The Repulsor Executioner does. Ballistas do. Those are like the big ones, honestly. Because other than that, right?
Vindicator is a classic, but it's going to be more inconsistent.
They really want Oath. Vindicators without Oath are a recipe to not do anything, which makes me sad. I love Vindicators, but unfortunately, listen, we have +1 to wound in combat, and that means you got to sacrifice something. So, sorry, Vindicators.
Next up, we have the Gladiator Reaper, which is the anti-infantry type of tank, and it gets the twin heavy onslaught Gatling cannon, sustain 2 when it is targeting infantry units.
Man, you know what this tank really loves?
Seeing Primaris Crusaders.
Sure, that, yes, I guess. Everything actually really kind of loves fighting Primaris Crusaders. You know what murders them like crazy is the Marshal, Castellan, Sword Brethren package. That does like heinous things to them. But
vaunted Black Templar mirror.
Yeah, if you're in the mirror and your opponent has 20-man squads and you have Rep X's and Sword Brethren with the full rerolls to hit lethal 5, oh man, it's not going to be good for them. So what does the Reaper really like? Unfortunately, the Gladiator Reaper really likes Oath. Because you have that sustained 2, so you can really try and just get that going and get, you know, if you get any crit 5s, like in maybe the Ironstorm, you can do some ridiculous stuff. Or, you know, you give them +1 to hit from like a Tech Marine, and then you can reroll everything fishing for 6s. But man, that gun really wants reroll to hit, and it really does not have it.
It needs the reroll hits to make sure you get enough dev wounds on the reroll wounds and sustained.
Yeah, to make sure that because the unit in regular Marines is very reliable. You go Oath on a target, you full rerolls to hit and wound because it's twin linked. You get some amount of sustained 2, and you just pick something up. But without that, it's incredibly unreliable. It's you just shoot and you find out, oh, did I get 7 hits? Cool, I did no damage.
On top of that, this is not the meta for large, important infantry units for the most part. It is a meta for a lot of monsters and vehicles.
Yeah, so I'm not like clamoring for this tank. In addition, while the multi-melta was perfect for the Lancer, it's not perfect for the Reaper. It wants to go into exactly the opposite thing that the that the multi-melta wants to go into. I'm not going to say this thing is in YGWY. It's just kind of a tank that's there. I think it's going to go into niche pick.
Yeah, it's niche right now. It could always change in the future, but for right now, it's not really a choice that you're going to want to make.
No, I don't think so.
And last, we have the Gladiator Valiant for the Gladiator tank variants, and this one gets the +1 to hit against the vehicles and monsters, and so you would think it'd be quite good in a meta that has a lot of vehicle and monsters.
You would think that. Unfortunately, it's +1 to hit only on the Twin Last Talon, and it's only +1 to hit into the closest eligible monster vehicle, which is still pretty good.
Yep.
Don't get me wrong. That rule is still pretty solid because the Twin Last Talon is twin-linked. That being said, this thing was one of my favorites in the past because you can get a ridiculous amount of multi-melta shots. Because you have the 2 side multi-meltas and then you have the 1 top multi-melta. So you have 6 multi-melta shots and the Twin Last Talon. The problem is this thing is a tank that hits on 3s. And it just shoots and it doesn't have rerolls. And that's a huge problem. Yes, it is the Twin Last Talon. That helps it out dramatically. That is going to land it not in niche pick. Good job, Gladiator Valiant. But the rest of it, unfortunately, is just a little too unreliable. It is the single biggest beneficiary of looking at something on average and trying to say that's what it does on average. But without any rerolls, yes, on average, you get some melta through into like a knight, but also you could just do nothing or kill it. Nobody knows. And unfortunately, for a tank that wants to get within 9 inches of you, the nobody knows part of it is a little not okay. 6 shots off the multi-meltas can be 5 hits, 4 wounds, dead tank. Or it could be 3 hits, 1 wound, and they pass their 6 up in cover. And suddenly, you just don't do anything. So I cannot condone a tank, unfortunately, that just does not reroll anything. It's twin-linked, I guess, on the last Talon. And as I said, the fact that it has a gun that is twin-linked and hits on 2s keeps it out of niche pick, because it would be a niche pick otherwise. But the top gun is reliable enough that I feel okay putting this in solid choice.
Yeah, I think it fits in solid choice, and it'll probably stay there for the rest of time.
Yeah, I mean, if you take a Valiant, I'm not against that, man. It is a lot of meltas, but you're not going to get anything reliable out of it, which is a little unfortunate.
Yeah. And probably it fits better in Black Templar builds that are going to try and skew towards the hulls, like some of the older Ironstorm variants.
Yes.
That's probably where you would see something like this.
That being said, if you take the Firestorm, you're taking the Gladiator Valiants.
Fair.
+1 strength on this thing makes it ridiculous. You still don't have Oath, and without Oath, the Firestorm is like an interesting option. An interesting, intriguing decision you have made. Because the strats are pretty bad, the enhancements are pretty bad, and you buff your shooting, but you don't have Oath. Not great. But if you do run that detachment, yes, you will run Valiants. Yep. Probably 3 of them, to be honest with you, because that's what you're trying to do, is spam meltas there.
Next up, we have the regular Repulsor, which is one of the mainline transports / tank at the same time.
Yes, it tries to be a main battle tank while also transporting, like 12 models, 14 models even.
Yep.
The Repulsor, the regular Repulsor, has always been a little inconsistent with what it does. Now, what I will say is it's cheap. It's 180. It's still toughness 12 with 16 wounds. So it's cheap, it's tough, it's OC 5. That's grand. In addition, it gets to the point where it has enough random anti-tank stuff where it's actually pretty good anti-tank. Right, you have the Las Talon, which is 2 basically like Las Cannon shots at strength 10. You have the Multi-Melta, you have a twin Las Cannon, and you have the Hunter Slayer missile. And that is a good amount of anti-tank shooting. It's 6 shots. And that's the point where this tank is more reliable than nothing, right? It's got the same problem as the Valiant, but at least it's 20 points more for +2 toughness, +4 wounds, +2 OC, right? And those are all big numbers.
And then it has a tricky rule, whereas if you shoot it, you can then, after that activation, drop out some guys that were embarked, which is a weird little janky rule.
It's a little weird. It's a little janky. At first, I thought it was if you shoot the transport, they get out and shoot back. I was like, oh my God.
Like Firestorm.
Oh my God. The Eradicator unit with Fire Discipline is back. Because you put the Eradicator unit with Fire Discipline in there. Sure, they only crit on 6s, and I will cry about that all day long. And then, but if you shoot the Repulsor, they get out and they blow you up. oh my god, that's so nope, they just get out. They just get out and stand there.
So it's like sneaking an objective or something like that, but that's not really the playstyle of Black Templars. That's not what they're about. It's not a defensive playstyle.
Also, I'm not really worried about what happens if my opponent makes a mistake. And shooting at the transport and letting me get out 6 inches away and also not prepping for that plan, right? Not covering the objective with something else, not pointing guns at me, not doing their...
Not surrounding it.
I'm not concerned about someone who's going to shoot at me. I go, I can get out of the transport, right? And they go, yeah. And then I get out of the transport on the objective in the open. They can't do anything about it. If that is what occurs...
Winning.
I probably, and this is going to be a little bit of a stretch, think I would have won anyway. So at that point, I need to really consider, how is this... It doesn't really have a data sheet rule I care about. How is this, making its money based off the transport capacity and its firepower? And it's like fine, I think. It's not good at any one thing. It's pretty damn tough. It's a little expensive. It's a pretty good transport. A little expensive. It's got okay shooting. A little expensive. Does all of the above. Not really something I am fishing for in a data sheet.
Competes with 2 Impulsors exactly.
Yeah, and it's 10 points more expensive. I think the 2 Impulsors are just better. So really, if you're taking this, you're taking a 10-man unit with something. I currently don't have any 10-man units I want to take. I think it's going to fall into niche pick, honestly.
Yeah,
it's not like YGWY, because it has some guns and it has some toughness and stuff. But
it's relatively cheap for what type of platform you get. It just doesn't do anything. It doesn't excel at anything where you're like, I need this in my list.
Correct. Yeah. If it still had the regular repulsor rule where if you charged it, they just get back in, that would actually be pretty gangster. I could consider taking that, but unfortunately they replaced that with kind of like a pretty mid rule, unlike the Repulsor Executioner, where they took its datasheet rule and made it very good.
Repulsor Executioner here. This is a tank for all ages and for all Black Templars.
Dude, the Repulsor Executioner is so cool. It's just like a little fortress that rolls along and just sprays bullets in every direction. It just looks so big. It's so cool. It's like a big gun, big laser gun at the front.
It's basically Games Workshop saying that I'd like you to spend the next 5 minutes rolling dice.
Oh, yeah. More, maybe. So here's the thing about the Repulsor Executioner. In the Codex, in Space Marines, the Codex originally, the datasheet roll on this was pretty not great. So if you could give this a bunch of buffs, you could make it good. The datasheet rule is like +1 to hit against stuff that's below half strength, because that's when I want my big, scary tank to shoot at, is stuff that's below half strength, clearly.
Mm-hmm.
That was a pretty big non-bow with how the unit wanted to operate. So you'd give it like Oath and like +1 to hit off a Tech Marine or something, and you would shoot it at stuff and it would kill that stuff. And it was fine, but the datasheet rule wasn't really helping. So they decided to change the datasheet rule in Black Templars. And I'm very happy that they did, because this probably wouldn't work as a tank without Oath or some kind of rerolls or some kind of whatever. It just probably wouldn't be relevant. Mm-hmm. Instead, they gave it a very relevant rule, Interception Strike. Every time this model makes a ranged attack that targets an enemy unit within 12 inches of one or more Adeptus Astartes units from your army, you full rerolls to hit. So that's just full rerolls to hit all the time. In practice, it's 12 inches of any Marine unit. The units that are giving the Repulsor Executioner full rerolls to hit don't need to be able to see the targets that they're giving the full rerolls to hit against. This can trigger on Overwatch, which generally is a great way to waste a couple minutes and not do anything, but occasionally can come up. But it's just a hyper reliable shooting platform, and man, this thing has so many guns. Let me see if I can get them off the top of my head. All right, so we got the big ass laser. We've got the multi-melta. We've got the chain cannon, which is like 12 shots with dev wounds. We've got a twin iron hail heavy stubber. We've got the little rocket pod. We've got the twin heavy bolter. We've got the defensive array. And I think I got all of them, because the regular heavy stubber is replaced with the multi-melta. Mm-hmm. I think that's it. And then you can replace the big laser with the macroplasma, which you probably don't do. That's a lot of guns. Yep, that's just a lot of guns.
Yeah, this is an absolutely reliable tank, reliable shooting. It kind of feels like World Eaters and their Forge Fiends, where you otherwise would be a pretty monodimensional army, having walking infantry slamming into stuff.
Yep, especially with a lot of the vehicles and shooting platforms not being particularly great in Black Templars. You would see a lot of like double Lancer, double Ballistus, because they still have rerolls. And that's kind of boring, honestly. Now you have your...
Instead, you get the
Super
big
Fortress.
daddy tank.
Yeah, you get the big daddy tank.
So, and he has transport capacity.
Which helps out a lot, actually. It helps out a lot. I like to put the Emperor's Champion unit in whatever Repulsor Executioner is going to be most forward out of the 3. Or 2. Honestly, 2 is where I land right now. And then he's fast enough, the EC is fast enough that he can still contribute to the fight out of there, and I don't have to take like 5 Impulsors. So, very good that it comes with a little bit of transport capacity, right? It comes with full rerolls to hit. This army has so much full rerolls to hit.
Oh, yeah.
Because the 2 best units basically in the book just come with full rerolls to hit on their datasheet. So, this army basically rerolls more hits than Ultramarines, which is kind of a pretty big flip of the script on what that army does most of the time. In addition, you went from really having to ponder where you put your buffs, right? Oath or any of your Doctrine buffs. Now you don't really have to worry about that. Everybody does their damage. Nobody really needs CP, which is great. In addition, in the Gladius, this thing does dumb stuff because it can advance and shoot. And crucially, there's a strat for +1 AP and ignores cover. And this thing has like 100 shots at AP 0 or 1. And if you make that AP 1 into 2 and ignore cover...
The nonsense adds up.
It's no longer nonsense anymore, my friend. It is you are dead. You'll shoot 2 up armor saves to death at that point because you ignore the cover and you go +1 AP. And so you're putting them to their invuln or giving them 3-ups on a billion shots. And then you still have the lasers. Now, the laser and the multi-melta, a little unreliable. That's why you take multiples, really. So you get that long-range shooting that actually adds up in multiples. But you need the laser destroyer because you really want to enforce those long threat ranges on your opponent. And also because it's cool as hell. And yes, that is going to land right up in auto take. Probably, if we're trying to, like... It probably lands right under or right above the Emperor's Champion. And yeah, that feels pretty good. That feels pretty solid.
We only have 1 data sheet left here, and that is going to be the classic Land Raider Crusader, originally only for Black Templars and eventually became accessible for others.
Yeah, not that you'd ever know, because nobody takes Land Raider Crusaders for very good reason. This is a 220-point tank. You know what it shoots? It does not shoot a big laser. No big lasers here. It shoots Hurricane Bolters. And Hurricane Bolters are a lot of shots at hitting on 3s with no rerolls at strength 4, AP 0, damage 1. And that is very bad. At least first off, the Repulsor Executioner has a big cannon, which is very important to me wanting that unit. If you take the heavy laser destroyer off, I don't want it anymore. In addition, it has full rerolls to hit, and this doesn't. And in addition, it has a lot more guns. So if you compare this thing straight up to a Repulsor Executioner, this thing loses every time. It does not have remotely enough guns, and its guns don't rerolls to hit. Fires a lot of shots that'll do basically nothing, which is not a great place to be. But they did give it a rule, Legacy of Gerolos or whatever. Never going to learn how that's pronounced because A, it's made up. And B, I'm never playing this thing. In your shooting phase, after this model has shot, you pick an enemy unit hit by 1 or more of those attacks. Until the end of the turn, each time a friendly model that disembarked from this transport this turn makes an attack that targets that enemy unit, reroll hit rolls and wound rolls of 1. That's a solid rule. I'll tell you what's not a solid rule is when I'm taking a 220-point tank in order to give my unit reroll 1 hit and win.
What about a 60-point Marshal for...
Yeah,
half plus?
Yes, I would take the Marshal Castellan for that cost. 220 is just so much, man. The thing is awkward to move around the board.
That's the big thing. Is its assault ramp allows it to move and then you disembark and then you can charge after, which is genuinely a good rule. You get the distance and then you charge after that. That's sweet, but it's gigantic. It cannot move on terrain.
Yeah. If I'm gonna put in the work to take a Land Raider, move it up the board, and do things with it, I'm just taking a Redeemer. Man, a Redeemer and a Crusader are just not the same thing. The Crusader sucks. The Redeemer, awesome. 65 points more to get the Redeemer than the Crusader. I don't care that this makes me roll 1s to hit and wound. I want it to actually do damage. It is a tank I paid a lot of points for. I want it to actually do something. I don't want it to be ignorable. I don't want to shoot at 5 Marines and be surprised when I kill 3 of them. Like, what are we doing? Why is it just bolters on this thing? Give it like AP1 bolters that ignore cover base, man. Like, come on. If you're firing just a bunch of bolters and you're like a 200 plus point tank, what are we doing, man? What are we doing? Nobody wants that. It has no role that is good.
It's just a legacy unit at this point.
I think so.
Yeah.
And like a Redeemer does Land Raider good, right? And you used to see it a bunch. It's 285 now, which is a little high. I could still see myself taking a Land Raider Redeemer. It has a role. It does that role very well. It's a little expensive, but you pay for what you get. This thing sucks. It does no damage. I'm paying 220 to take a transport that gives my unit reroll 1s to hit and wound. Congrats, I suppose.
Yeah, I think the old Crusader, just like it would in Space Marines, fits in that YGWY. It doesn't fit into the modern game anymore, and it'll need a rethink at some point, I imagine.
Yes. I think it needs its Hurricane Bolters to actually do some kind of damage. So it would just have to be like a Crusader Hurricane Bolter. AP1 ignores cover. Now we can talk. But without that, man, it's like 24 shots, they'll do actually 0 damage. I mean, like, what is the average damage? It's like 16 hits, 8 wounds. They failed 2 of them on Marines, 3 maybe. You killed a guy. Woo! I've said enough on this thing.
All right, so that's going to wrap us up on the Black Templar data sheets, and we almost have perfect symmetry. If there were 2 more data sheets, I imagine they would fit directly in Solid Choice. I have no doubt.
Yeah, maybe. Something I'll notice that you notice about this army, actually, is the haves and the have-nots feel very distinct. And same thing in Grey Knights.
Very similar to Grey Knights.
There are a bunch of units that just feel like there's not really a reason to run them. Even the ones in niche pick are kind of like, okay, I have to struggle to come up with a scenario that makes me actually happy to take this unit. Mm-hmm. And then you pivot over to the units that occupy, tournament staples and auto takes, and you're like, wow, these units are good. So the disparity between the haves and the have-nots in this codex is huge, right? And also the disparity in the power level of like some of the data sheets and the detachments are night and day. It feels like 2 separate people wrote them. Because it feels like the person who wrote the Terminators is the same person who wrote the detachments. And it feels like the person who wrote the Emperor's Champion wrote that datasheet and then went to vacation, right? Just went on vacation, didn't come back. I hope they will sometime.
He probably wrote the Castellan as well.
He probably wrote so the Emperor's Champion's like really well designed, I think. The Castellan is a reroll hit bot.
I think Sword Brethren are too.
Sword Brethren are also really well designed. So he wrote those 2 datasheets and then he just left. Man, he just left. And he wrote down a note for reroll hits, and so they made a couple data sheets that just full reroll to hit. So that's a little weird. It's a little weird on it, honestly. But the stuff that's in the good tiers, man, very solid.
It's super good.
Very good.
The comparison with Grey Knights is very apt. Is you have a handful of data sheets that are absolute auto takes. You're always going to see them in every single list, and then there's like half the roster is just not really have a role in the army, and even if it has a detachment that it synergizes with, it's still, because of its lack of ability to do a role well, it doesn't even fit into the place it's supposed to go.
Yes, like the Ancients in the Ancient detachment, it's just a big ball of bad.
It's just a tax.
Yeah, like I'm not going to pay. It's like legitimately playing like a 1670 point army so I get my rules. I'm not doing that. Ancients suck. So I'm not... The problem with Black Templars actually legitimately is not that you can't make a good list. And it's not that you can't make a fun list. You can. You can make the list we've all been writing. Because GW basically holds you down and tells you you're playing the Gladius. It's the only playable detachment.
I think
maybe the Stormlance. The Stormlance is like playable. I think it's like just worse, kind of, but whatever. You can make the argument. But you're playing a Codex Marine detachment, probably the Gladius. You're taking these data sheets, because they're the good ones, in this configuration. Cool. And you can like tinker around the edges with that. Probably lists will be 200 to 300 points distinct from each other. But it does feel like I'm being told how to write my list. It's kind of annoying, honestly. So I hope they give some of the lower, data sheets in here a little bit of love, a couple of the detachments some love, so you can see a little bit more expression of like personality and whatnot in your lists. Like I want to run the Black Templar Gladius because I like the Black Templar Gladius, not because it's the only way to play Black Templars. And currently I think it is.
Well, that just about wraps us up here. So thank you so much for joining us. Hope you enjoyed this breakdown. Do you agree with us? Disagree with us? What have you been enjoying in your games? Let us know in the comments below. In addition, give us a like, subscribe to the channel, and tell your friends about us. All of it massively helps us grow. If you haven't checked it out, there was a Grey Knight tier list the previous week, and Jack and I also discussed Grey Knights and Black Templars live on the Thursday show. So go ahead and check that out and enjoy it. In addition, if you want to see more content like Jack's Black Templars, Gladius in action, smashing things, head over to the Warm at thewarm.vhx.tv. There's a 3-day free trial, and on top of that, you get access to our international Discord community that does have a Black Templars channel, and it is a very vibrant channel right now. There's a lot of activity going on. And even better than that, there is a group coaching coming up with Jack on Black Templars where he's going to deep dive the faction and how to play it at a high level. So tons of content for Black Templars if you are excited about the army, and we hope you are. So thank you so much for joining, and we will see you all very soon for more content. So long for now.
Bye-bye.